On the 30th of July, 1916, New York awoke with a start in the early hours of the morning. Across the city, residents tumbled from their beds as the ground itself shook and shuddered. Thousands of windows shattered, buildings swayed. A rain of hot shrapnel fell across huge swathes of Manhattan. The night sky glowed a vivid orange with a blast the size and scale of which no living person had seen before. Night watchmen in the city, witnessing this explosion, did not try to flee but instead fell to their knees and prayed, assuming that there was no possible way that they would survive. This was what would later come to be known as the Black Tom explosion, an act of sabotage that would soon change the course of history. Black Tom Island started life as a large rock in New York Harbor, viewed by fishermen in the 1800s as nothing more than an inconvenience and a hazard to be avoided. Over the course of many years, local industry used the rock as a place to dump refuse, until so much material had been landfilled there that the barren rock had grown into a potentially useful island. In the 1880s, this island was developed with the addition of a causeway and railway lines. Now it could be used as a convenient dock. Ships could load and unload there, with their cargo transferred to and from the mainland by train. When the First World War began in Europe in 1914, the US initially decided that it wanted no part in the conflict. Then President Woodrow Wilson announced that the United States must be neutral in fact as well as in name during these days that are to try men's souls. We must be impartial in thought as well as action. The citizens of the United States mostly agreed. America remained neutral throughout the first years of the First World War. Though many were, of course, sympathetic to one side or the other, US citizens were adamant that they did not wish to be drawn into the fighting that was devastating Europe. This neutrality meant that American industries could, in theory, trade with any of the European countries involved in the conflict. In reality, though, the Allies maintained a naval blockade of Central Europe, making it almost impossible for US manufacturers to ship their goods there. This meant that, during the early years of the war, munitions manufactured in the US were sold almost exclusively to Allied nations, while trade with Germany plummeted to just 1/10 of what it had been before the conflict began. The US was neutral, but the Germans quite clearly saw that US industry was disproportionately benefiting the Allies, and so made plans to sabotage the transit of US munitions. Black Tom Island would have been a tempting target for any would-be saboteur. A huge amount of munitions flowed through the island, all of it bound for Allied nations. At any one time, there was likely to be an incredible amount of explosives stockpiled on Black Tom, either on board ships or in warehouses or trains waiting to be loaded. It was all guarded by a staff of fewer than 10 people at night, and much of the area was unlit and unprotected by fences or walls. It was, in short, an almost perfect target. In the early hours of the 30th of July, 1916, saboteurs struck this target. Shortly after midnight, guards at Black Tom Island became aware of not just one but several fires burning at various points around the island. Knowing the sheer quantity of high explosives that were stockpiled on the island, some guards fled at once. Others attempted to fight the flames and called the Jersey City Fire Department for further support. Though the fire department rushed to the scene, they could not contain the fires. The flames spread until at around 2 a.m. they engulfed ammunition stores, and a massive explosion took place. The blast was of a scale previously unimagined by the people of New York. To this day, it remains one of the largest non-nuclear explosions ever to have taken place. Nearly 100 miles away, people were shaken awake in their beds. Tens of thousands of windows in lower Manhattan shattered in a single moment. Boats were, according to witnesses, lifted from the water and thrown into the air. Night watchmen in lower Manhattan said their prayers, assuming from the mere sight of the blast that their lives were over. Debris and shrapnel arced through the air and peppered the surrounding city. On nearby Liberty Island, hot metal fragments blasted into the Statue of Liberty, causing some cosmetic damage, and also impacting rivets on the statue's upraised arm. Up until this point in history, it had been possible for visitors to climb not just to the crown of the statue, but also to her torch. Following the Black Tom explosion, the staircase leading to the torch was permanently closed. It has never reopened. Explosions, small and large, continued throughout the night. One of the worst took place when the fully loaded Johnson Barge No. 17 caught fire and detonated. On board had been 50 tons of TNT and 417 cases of detonators, one of the largest stockpiles of explosives in the world at the time. The barge had been temporarily moored at Black Tom Island to save on the $25 fee that would have to be paid to have it towed to a safer location in the bay. As the barge exploded, New Yorkers ran for shelter under a rain of debris and broken glass. Even as far away as Philadelphia and Maryland, sleeping residents were jolted awake by what felt like an earthquake. In total, the explosion caused around $20 million worth of damage, including devastated warehouses, broken windows, damaged buildings, and blasted railway cars. Those who witnessed it believed that hundreds must have died in the inferno, but later counts ascertained that only around 7 people had been killed, a miraculously low number given the size of the blast. Hundreds were, however, injured, and thousands had to be evacuated from their homes until the area was made safe. Naturally, authorities soon began to search for the cause of the explosion. At first, the guards responsible for protecting Black Tom Island were suspected. They admitted that they had ignited smudge pots, candle-like devices designed to repel mosquitoes. Could a spark from these have led to an accidental fire? This theory was investigated and then dismissed. The guards had not been responsible. So who had? Suspicion fell on a number of individuals, though nothing could be definitively proven. It was nonetheless theorized that the German ambassador to Washington, Count Johann von Bernstorff, was in part responsible. Indeed, years later, it became clear that the ambassador had been quietly working, throughout the First World War, to covertly advance the German cause in a number of ways, from sponsoring small acts of sabotage to providing false documentation to key German figures in the US. Among the tools von Bernstorff and his associates used to spread chaos was the cigar or pencil bomb, a tiny cylindrical device about the size of a cigar that could be set up to start a fire hours or days after it was planted. Typically, these would be hidden on ships before they headed out to sea, with the intention of setting them aflame when they were out on the open ocean. Over the course of the war, more than 30 ships may have been sabotaged in this fashion. It was believed that 3 agents working under von Bernstorff had used cigar bombs to start the fires that led to the explosions on Black Tom Island. No individual responsibility could ever be proven, though the evidence was considered sufficient to deem the German state liable for the explosion. Compensation of around $50 million was demanded in the late 1930s, but was not paid until long after the conclusion of the Second World War. Indeed, Germany was left making compensatory payments for the Black Tom explosion well into the 1970s. The damage caused by the explosion was repaired long before then. What was once Black Tom Island was reinstated and eventually turned into a park. It is now part of Liberty State Park, which also includes the Statue of Liberty. There are no warehouses or docks there now, but instead a monument, a viewpoint, and a picnic area. An information board mounted there tells the story of the Black Tom explosion. The Black Tom explosion was one of the first of many violent acts that dragged the US into the First World War, and eventually led to the conclusion of the conflict. It also spurred the US to create a national security service and establish counter-espionage organizations. The Black Tom explosion changed the course of World War I. It shaped New York. After one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history, the city rebuilt and recovered, just as it has done many times throughout its history.